Hello. Today I thought I would go over the Claude Code. And the reason I want to bring it up is because I've been in IT for a long time and I can sit down, I can design and create an application. And, depending on the complexity and depending on the subject at hand, it might take anywhere from a few hours to months. I mean, it just depends on the scope and complexity of the application. But at least I know how to design a system and how to develop it using computers, code, databases, all of that stuff. Small businesses that don't have their own IT department don't have the luxury of being able to do the same thing, nor do they know what to do and how to do it. So today I thought I'd show you what the super brilliant folks at Anthropic put together. It's called Claude Code. And what it allows you to do with a little bit of setup, it's not difficult to set it up. You just need to follow the instructions exactly how they tell you. And you can get it set up on your computer. Once you get it set up, then you can actually talk to it. It's like a little chat, basically, interface, just like any LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, any of those. And you can ask it to do something for you in terms of writing a program. Now, you've had capabilities before to be able to tell Claude, for example, to code something. And then, it would create a program. And then it may not work perfectly, so you kind of keep iterating and asking it to do more and more. Again, it really required you having some knowledge of programming to be able to know how to guide it. In terms of developing the whole app, not just one page at a time type deal, that was a little bit more problematic for people who have never done this before or had very little experience with such. So this Claude Code allows you to actually design a full-blown app, if you will, and code it and make it happen. I'm not gonna go through the details of how to set up Claude Code. That's another thing I wanted to point out is if you ever have any questions, I mean, you're welcome to obviously down below there to leave them for me. I'll be happy to answer them. But a lot of times you might have a question and you don't have somebody to ask. Just ask Claude. Even if you get some kind of an error and you don't know what to do about it, you can go searching to find out how to fix it, or you can just ask Claude or ask ChatGPT to do it for you. Personally, I recommend using Claude for coding. I've done it quite a bit myself, even before this Claude Code came out, and it did a pretty decent job. I mean, I actually developed an entire app for a fractional ownership industry with rule-based reservation system. I mean, it's got all kinds of different capabilities, and it was all done under my direction. But the code was, I would say, probably 99% written by Claude. There were a couple of times when the thing got totally perplexed and for lack of a better word, couldn't figure out what to do, and it just kept going into these rabbit holes, which it shouldn't have been going. So I had to stop it and just make the changes myself. But that's a very rare scenario when something like this happens. So I was able to create the entire app, and it works fine, and great. But this Claude Code is even more impressive in many ways than regular coding with Claude. And so one of the things that speaking of the fractional ownership situation, I was actually working for a company and I developed it for them. They wound up not using it. And so that was the end of that. And at the time when I was working for them, I was tracking my time using a timer app that I signed up for. It was one of those cloud-based timer apps. And now that the project is no longer with us, I decided, why pay for the timer app unless I get some other project where I need it? I basically will discontinue my subscription. It wasn't expensive, it did the job, so it was good enough. But then I was thinking when I was doing this Claude Code, I thought, okay, I don't have the timer app anymore. Why don't I just create one in this thing and essentially doing the same thing that the other timer app did and see what it'll do, just to give it a test to see how good is this thing. And so the result is, let me just show you the screen here. I realize this is a little scary looking, but don't worry about it. it's just something I run in the dark mode, and I had some questions, so it was giving me the answers, and so there's a whole session there. Why don't we do this? Why don't we switch from this screen to this screen here, so you can actually see what it looks like as the end result. And as you can see, it's pretty attractive looking. We'll go over it in a second once I explain to you how the thing was done. So essentially what I did was I went to start Claude Code, and then I put together a prompt for it that looked like something like this. Actually, it didn't look something like this. It looked exactly like this. So I said in my prompt, I'd like you to create a web-based app using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP. I'm a PHP fan, so I like to do stuff in PHP. That'll track simple projects and how much time was spent on them. So I'm basically describing basics of what this app is going to be doing. I'd like to be able to create a project and then create various tasks at will and have ability to start and stop a timer manually that would be tied to a particular project/task. Then I'd like to be able to run a report for a specified date range that would show the details of time spent. Also, I'd like each task to have a billable checkbox. The amount, if billable, should be based on the rate specified in the project itself. So all the tasks in the project would be billed at the same rate, provided billable checkbox is checked for that particular task. Ask if you have any questions. I mean, I'm telling it to ask me if it needs some clarification. And I said, I'd like to have the code be easily transportable to any host without the need to install any additional software. I'd like the web app to be simple to use, attractive, and responsive. So in other words, it would run equally well on the phone, on the mobile devices, as well as the desktops, tablets, and so on. That's all I told it. Literally, this is the prompt as I was actually using, okay? And so in about 10 minutes, if you can believe that, I couldn't believe it, but believe it, I basically had my app that looked like this. In terms of looking at the actual files, you can see them here. It's 1, 2, 3 directories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 files. Even though one of them is README, so it's just information, basically 5 files. So 5 files, 3 directories. And so nice setup. It's got includes, it's got JavaScript and JS folders, CSS. I mean, that's how you normally program. So in other words, it did all of this. I didn't have to do anything, and it did a very nice job. And then, of course, when you actually run it, first time it does a little setup on its own behind the scenes, so it can store data and everything else. Other than that, basically, there's really nothing. You just simply get the files, transfer them to your host, and then you can run it immediately, and this is what you see. So I already put a couple of testings in there to test it out, to make sure it's working correctly, and it seems to be. And so up at the top here, we see it says time tracker, and also we see dashboard. So basically, we're looking by default at this dashboard. If you click on projects, then you're able to click on new project, very nicely done. And we'll do a project name. We'll give it, let's see, call it example project, okay? And then also notice they put a description. I didn't ask it to put description, but put description. This will be used, showcase how this works. Whatever, obviously you can put description to be whatever you want, or leave it blank, whatever you want to do. Hourly rate, we'll put the market rate today of $200 per hour. And no, I don't charge $200 per hour most of the time, but sometimes, it depends on the client. Then I go and say create project, and that's it. So now we've got 2 projects. We have this old test project at $200 an hour, and we got the this project here. Now again, the hourly rate is for the purposes of billable tasks. So it's not like everything in this project will be billable. I could have set it up this way, but I chose to do it on a task-by-task basis. And then, of course, if I want to change it, you can just click on the little pencil icon here, and if I want to change it to be from 200, let's say to be, let's change it to be, no, let's get a raise, 250 an hour, just so you can see it's different. Update project, no problem. Now we got 250. So in other words, you can see it's obviously working, doing what you need, and then you have a little garbage cans here to delete it, redirect it. So very intuitive, very simple, works like a champ. Then on the tasks, you have a similar situation where you basically can create new tasks. And when you create a new task, it's asking you which project do you want to create it in. It shows you the pull down. So I'm going to do example. Task name would be record a video showcasing this project. And I can put, more description here, whatever I want to do. And then let's make it billable. So we'll create a task there. And then the next thing, we'll do another new task, and we'll give it the project, same project, where we're going to say this will be deploy the files to the server, FTP all of the files involved in this project to the hosting company. Okay, so we'll put that in there, click on create, boom. Okay, so now we have several tasks in there. And so basically at this point I'm done with tasks. So what's happening then is if I go to the dashboard, then I can easily see that there's an easy way to select the task. We have all our tasks right there. And this is something that I was thinking possibly I will change it later to be able to select the project, and then it would show you the tasks for that project. I think this would make it a little bit easier for you to use, because otherwise you might have too many tasks. I mean, I realize it's flexible this way because I can select any task at any point in time with a single click. But if you work on a lot of projects and you have a lot of different tasks for each project, then it could become a little bit too long of a list. So I might ask it to change it so you can actually select the task based on the project. So in our case, we'll select project, say deploy files, and we're going to start a timer. And so when we start a timer, it shows active timer, it's counting how long it's taking, and on the dashboard here, of course, it shows you how much do you have so far in billable hours and dollars for today, and also this week. So you always on the dashboard see exactly where you're at. If you're doing a lot of different projects and you're charging different rates, you're doing different things, it's nice to be able to see where you're at for today in terms of how much you made, and then also for this week. Obviously, you might want to also do another report for a particular period of time more than just today or this week, but that's part of the reports, which I'll show in a second. So while it's doing this thing, then let's go back to, reports. And you can see on the reports here, you can select, it shows you the summary for today's date as default, or this month, I should say. And then you can select any date you want. It's got nice little calendars in there. You can select, apply the filter, and it would show you that, from this date to this date, nothing was happening. And so you can still see the active timers out there doing its thing, and you can see it's counting. One thing that's weird about the way it generated it, it shows the timer as a countdown, which is, I don't know why it did that, because obviously I didn't specify anything. So I think I'll have to go back and specify so it just shows regular seconds, minutes, and hours instead of this. It's basically counting down from 1 minute, and then it's going to come down. It's counting down seconds. So it's like minutes, hours, and then I'm assuming this would be days. I don't know. So it's like up to 8 days. I don't know exactly why it's set up this way, but I'm going to ask it to change it. I'm not going to change it myself. So it does it in a normal format, but basically it's still counting correctly and doing its thing, even with this kind of a little bit of a weird display. You can easily select whatever report you want. And then, one of the options I was thinking of adding is ability to extract the report as a PDF file. Obviously, I could easily do a print to PDF from this screen. It would do the same thing, but it's nice to have an option to export as potentially maybe an Excel file, or export it as a PDF. It would be useful for like accounting purposes, things like that. So there's still some work. I'm showing you the version it created without me making any changes whatsoever. Okay? And it's still pretty remarkable what it did, in my opinion. So if we go back to tasks, well, actually, we don't even need to go back. Over here, we have the stop button. So let's say we wanted to stop it, we just stop it, and then it's done. And so then it jumps back to the dashboard, and you can see that for this particular deploy files, we spent 3 minutes and 4 seconds. So it does this part here perfectly. And it's a billable situation for this particular task. Okay? So if I set up a task for a non-billable, it shows up as non-billable. This one is billable. So again, you can go back to reports, And you can see that if you apply the filter for the whole month, you can see that we so far we have $19.61 billable hours based on the rates that were specified. So that's basically the app, and I think it did a phenomenal job, in my opinion, in generating something like this from the get-go, just from that little prompt I gave it. And the moral of the story here is that if you want to create some small application to do a particular task or set of tasks, and you don't know how to program, you don't need to run out and hire the next guy or hire me. I'll be happy to work for you, but you don't need to do that anymore. You can just spend a little bit of time working with Claude Code, and it'll generate a very close to what you need application. And when I say very close, it already generated exactly what I wanted. It's just some of these additional embellishments I was thinking would make it a little bit nicer, so you can work with it to iterate a little bit and make it a little bit better. But the bottom line, in one shot, in less than 10 minutes literally, it created this application for me. And you can even use this using a regular free version of Claude. You have this Claude Code. You don't need to have a paid version. And it's remarkable if you think about what you do in your business and how many different things you could potentially do if you just had an app to help you do it, but you don't know how to program and you don't want to spend the money necessarily. Not necessarily because you don't want to, it's just you can't. You can't afford to hire somebody to write this, to have the time spent to develop it, because the return on investment is just not worth it. It's super useful. You'd like to be able to do it, but at the same time, when you look at these other things, just forget it. I'm not doing it. And so you end up doing things manually where you could have the computer do it for you in a very methodical and a very appropriate manner. So definitely check out Claude Code from Anthropic. Create some similar apps that I did if you want, or different apps, whatever you need is the name of the game here. If you do want this particular app, then just simply, I guess you can just send me a message that you want it, and I'll put it together into a zip file and get it to you so you can deploy it on whatever server you have. And I specifically wanted to do this as a web-based app so it's easily deployable on any server. Because if you do something using, for example, like Node.js, which a lot of apps these days are being done, then you want to make sure on your server you're running Node.js. If you're doing something that's done in Python, you want to make sure your server can do Python. If you're running on a shared server, a lot of people that run shared servers don't allow you to deploy Python, and they don't run Python by default, even though pretty much the whole world now is beginning to run in Python. Most hosts, when you have a regular shared account, unless you set it up yourself, they don't allow you to use it, and they don't allow you to set it up unless you have like a VPS account. So the bottom line being, using something like this to create a web-based app that uses nothing but what all the hosts have, because every single host can easily do web application with PHP. You don't have to do anything special to have that kind of account. And so you can just ask Claude to generate that kind of app, and you're up and running. Simply upload the files using FTP or whatever other method you want to use to get the files over there to the server, and bring it up in your browser, and you're up and running. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. Again, this example was meant to not just show you what Claude Code can do and what this little timer app does, but give you ideas for being able to do a lot of things you thought you couldn't do on your own, but now you can with Claude Code. Check it out. Thanks. Until next time. Wait. Slow down. No, we're not quite done yet. I'm still Oleg, but we're not done yet. So after doing this recording yesterday and thinking about making some of these changes I mentioned, I decided to go ahead and implement those. And the result was not what you'd expect. In fact, it was pretty bad. It started having some issues all the way to the 500 errors, which are typically kind of difficult to debug. And after a few iterations, not too many, maybe between 5 and 10, obviously too many for my taste, because I thought I was all done. It looked like it was going into these rabbit holes that it does sometimes, and there was no coming back, and I didn't want to spend the time thinking with it and trying to try this and try this and try this. And bottom line being that I basically told it, I said, just scrap the whole thing. You know what I wanted to do, redo it from scratch, and let's see if we can make it work. And finally, at that point, it actually did work correctly. It erased all the data like I asked it and everything else. So the short story is that it's not perfect, as I alluded to earlier. It still potentially could have some issues. The better news is that even though that's the case, it still was able to get, in the end, things done. You're looking at the screen right now. It still has the same functionality. It doesn't have the problems that we talked about before. Also, I did try it yesterday on my phone, and it does look pretty nice. So it is a good job to make it responsive. Kudos to the code team for making it work like this. It's great. And so now we have the app here, and we have some information. And if I want to start a timer, I can just indicate right here, see I can't select the task because I haven't selected the project. So I select the project, I select the task, and start the timer. And over here it says timer started successfully. At first I was kind of a little bit dissatisfied with this. It's like, why do I need to have this line? It doesn't really tell me anything. Obviously I clicked to start the timer, so it started. But in retrospect, I think it's nice to have it there, especially so on the mobile, because mobile doesn't look exactly like that because of the nature of the screen limitations. On the mobile, actually, you don't see this particular bar and this particular timer going like this unless you click on the pull down hamburger menu on the right side. So at first I thought that it didn't have anything at all. I thought that's not good because you want to be able to see the timer going, but it does have it. You just need to pull down the menu. But everything else is good. You know, we can add any number of tasks for any number of projects, make it billable, non-billable. So it did a nice job. It changed the interface a little bit, not dramatically, so a little bit. And one of the things you can do now, let me just go ahead and stop this and go to the dashboard here. And one of the things you can do now, if you look at tasks, it's the dashboard, let's look at tasks. They put the interface, so at the top you have ability to add new tasks, below you have all the existing tasks, and they did the same thing with projects. You have these little cards, shows you the hourly rate, you can edit it, you can delete it, so they changed it a little bit from the prior version. You can look at all the tasks, it shows you all the tasks. I mean, it's nice. And over here on the right side, you have edit and the trash can for deleting. And then this little play button basically starts the timer. So if you hover over it, it says start timer. So that's kind of cool. You can go quickly see any task, click on the timer, and it gets going with the timer right there. And you let it do its thing, and then when you get done, you just click on stop, and it's done. Over here on the dashboard, you can see for today, billable time, minute 10 seconds, amount $3.89. Total time so far is, I guess it's the same thing because I just started doing this today, so it wouldn't be any different. But basically, you would get the weekly stuff, and you would have that. And of course, you can also go to reports, and on the report side, you can see time by project, time by task, which is pretty cool how you can see all these things. And then at the bottom, it's got detailed time entries. So these are the summaries, basically, for each task or for each project. So you really can see it in a quick way. And of course, up at the top here, you have start date and end date. So you can specify parameters to be whatever dates you want to use. You apply it, and now I got nothing because I selected the date range. Doesn't have anything in it. So that's the new time tracker version 1 plus or 2.0, whatever you want to call it. And it does seem to work. I haven't found any bugs. The timer now shows correctly. Everything seems like it's working exactly the way it's supposed to be. So again, kudos to the team, Claude Code team. They did a wonderful job, and I'm definitely going to be using it for some additional things. And obviously you can as well. One of the things I was thinking, I don't do a lot of transactions. So a lot of times I work on a project that takes, 2 weeks or 4 months or even longer. And so there aren't that many transactions, but at the same time, clearly there are some. And so to track it, I used to use the app called Wave Accounting, which is a very nice app actually. And the free version that they have still gives you a ton of capabilities. The problem with that app, I don't use 99% of what they have because it's meant to be an accounting package with all the accounting features and bells and whistles. And I just basically mainly want to put in my invoices, so it tracks those. Then I want to be able to enter payments when they come in. I want to be able to have some kind of reconciliation to see who owes how much money or what I've got coming up cash flow wise. And then end of the year reporting for tax purposes. That's it. I don't really want anything much fancier than that. There's not enough volume going through to be able to have all these other things. And I'm my own accountant in terms of tracking stuff. So basically, it does the job. But again, 99% of it that they have lots of different features and options I don't use. So what I was thinking is using the same code application here to create just what I need, create a system to track invoices, track payments, and provide the reports for a particular date range. And I'm sure it will look just as nice as this would, and it would do exactly what I want, and I can develop it on my own in minutes, and then utilize it going forward. So that's another use case that I think would be useful, not just for me, but for any small business that doesn't really have a lot of activity or needs to have a lot of usual accounting where they run general ledger reports and they run AR reports and AP reports, things like that. If you don't have that kind of need, this should be more than good enough to develop something like that. And pretty much anything, if you think about your business, if you think about things that you're doing that are either complicated or repetitive or manual or time consuming, then if you have any tasks that fit all four of these, then to me it's an absolute mandatory need to automate it and to put some tech behind it. If you have any of those categories fitting the mold, then it's still worthwhile to look into to potentially replace it with some sort of app that'll do the job. You can look at it from that perspective and come up with some apps. Obviously, you can develop them using different programming languages and databases that you can tell it what to use. And all of a sudden, you're able to do IT department equivalent jobs in your business without having an IT department. I realize I'm talking myself out of a job here, but it is what it is. So again, if you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. Go ahead, play with this thing, see what you can do. And until next time, for the last time today, I'm Oleg.